Hello everyone, welcome to Study IQ. So we will continue our discussion on economy. We are in the module industry. We just started off with this module and we have done with the first session, that is industrial policy, and we have discussed various industrial policies starting from 1948. Okay, so we have talked about industrial policy resolution 1948 and we have seen the features of that, and then we have talked about the next one, which is very important, which is known as economic constitution of India, that is industrial policy resolution 1956, and we have seen the different categories, the priorities and everything of this particular policy. And we have also talked about the third one, industrial policy statement 1977. We have talked about industrial policy statement 1980, and then we have talked about new industrial policy 1991, and we have discussed about what is this LPG, why is it done, what was the objectives, MRTP Act, and all those provisions we have discussed. Okay, and then we have discussed about the features. So here in this session I'll be talking about assessment of new industrial policy. Okay, so this assessment of this is what we are going to see here. Assessment of new industrial policy 1991, or broadly we will see the assessment of industrial policies altogether. Now before that I have missed out one point here. When we discussed about new industrial policy 1991, in the features I have missed out one point, that is, see, the public sector, related to public sector, the public sector to be confined to socially relevant area. Okay, so that I have missed out. Public sector to be confined to socially relevant areas. Okay, now so you can add this along with the points that we have discussed before in this new industrial policy. Now see, post reform, public sector has been given less importance, right? Private investments, and our economy was opened up. Now what is the problem? The market is getting better and better with the investments which are coming, but will that meet the social objectives? Now if you see post reform time, what happened with poverty? Okay, so poverty actually increased rather than it should have been decreased, right? Because investments are coming, the GDP is increasing, the production is more. Instead of unemployment to be decreased, it is actually increased, because almost all the investments which are coming as capital intensive investment and not labor intensive. And service sector led growth, that also led to jobless growth. Okay, so growth is there but job creation is not there. So unemployment instead of decreasing, it was actually increased. See, one thing that you can understand is market cannot meet the social justice, right? Market cannot ensure social justice. For that, government intervention is required. So public sector to be confined to socially relevant area. See, market will produce something if there is demand. Okay, if there is no demand, market won't produce anything. What is demand? Demand is a person's willingness and ability to buy. Both has to be there, willingness and ability to buy some quantity of a commodity. Okay, so if demand is there, then only there will be production, there will be supply. So even if you are willing, that doesn't mean that it will create demand. You must be able to buy. For example, I may willing to buy an aeroplane, but if I don't have the ability to buy that, it won't create demand in the market, nobody will produce it. Similarly, if you consider a poor person, a beggar, he is willing to have food, but if he don't have money to buy food, his hunger will not create demand for food in the market. Market is not going to do anything for you if you don't have the ability. So for market to do something, there should be demand, and for demand, ability should also be there, not just willingness. So that difference has to be clear. So market cannot ensure social justice, so government intervention is required. So for that, public sector to be confined to socially relevant areas. Okay, so this poverty is actually increased after reform, and unemployment also actually increased. Now the reason is capital intensive investment, not labor intensive. That is actually the problem. So it is not creating employment opportunities. So that's the first point. Now what are the public sector reforms? If you see, I'll talk about some public sector reforms also. Public sector reforms, again under the same new industrial policy itself. So first one, dereservation. Okay, See, industries which were reserved for public sector, it was 17 before, now it was reduced to 8, like rail, transport, atomic energy, etc. Okay, so it was 17, now it was reduced to 8. Okay, so some sectors which are reserved for public sector, like rail, transport, atomic energy, etc., that number is actually reduced from 17 to 8. Second one, disinvestment, which we have already discussed when we discuss about budget and many other areas also. We have talked about this in detail. So disinvestment means government is diluting the share, right? So government is basically selling the share. So when we discussed about budget, at that time also I have told you, when you are selling the share, what you will get? You will get money. So that will come under where it is a receipt, right? When you're receiving, it is a receipt. Now, when you're selling the share, is there anything to do with asset or liability? Yes. When you're selling the share, your assets are decreasing. So if assets are decreasing, it is a kind of, capital receipts. So I've told you already these things in detail in our previous session. So this is disinvestment policies, then professionalization of management of public sector units, professionalization of management. That means private sector experts to be appointed as the managers or the directors of the public sector. Okay, so then sick public sector units to be revived by BIFR to revive the sick PSUs. BIFR means board for industrial and financial reconstruction. We will revisit to this point later also, so you just remember BIFR, Board for Industrial Financial Reconstruction. Then one more, scope of MOUs to be enhanced. This is one of the most successful reform when it comes to public sector. Scope of MOUs to be enhanced. Actually, this MOUs concept was introduced in 1987 on the recommendation of Arjun Sen Gupta committee. Arjun Sen Gupta committee. So what is this MOU? Basically, under this, it is actually an agreement between the management of the PSU and the concerned ministry. And under this, a reasonable degree of autonomy is actually given to the management of PSU. And they will be held responsible for the performance of that PSU. So it is actually an agreement or arrangement between management of PSU. So you need to know what is it, okay? Management of PSU and concerned ministry. And it is actually providing the much required autonomy to the former, that means the management of PSU. So provide autonomy to the management, and it also held accountable for performance of the PSU. So these are the things which, this is what I have left out. I have left out discussing this, public sector reforms and this point. So we have covered this. So I hope you know what is dereservation. You understood disinvestment. Professionalization of management means appointing a private sector expert as the director of a public sector company. Then Board for Industrial and Financial Reconstruction, BIFR, for reviving the sick PSUs, and also this one, scope of MOUs to be enhanced. So this MOUs based on which committee, that is a prelims question, very important prelims question. So you need to know that. Now we will go for assessment of new industrial policy. Assessment of NIP 1991. So when you talk about assessment, it is industrial policy. So we'll start with industrial growth itself, very important component. So industrial growth, right? See, basically all these are done to promote growth. By promoting growth, you can create employment opportunities, so you can reduce the problem of unemployment, and with that you can remove poverty. So everything has to do with industry. So let's see what is the industrial growth. We will see before that means during 1980s, before the reform, and during then post reform, immediately the first 5 years, 92 to 97, that 8 5-year plan period, okay, and then 97 to 2002, that is the 9th 5-year plan period. So the 5-year plans, I hope you know how to remember. The first plan 1951 to 56, second 56 to 61, third 61 to 66. So 3 plans, then there were 3-year gaps, okay, and then 2 plans, okay, like that is from 69 to 74, then 74 to 78. Why it is not 79? It was to be 79, but Janata Party came into power and it was aborted, and they started rolling plans. So these 3-year gap, you can see annual plans, now 2-year rolling plans, and from 80 the planning resumed. So 80 to 85 and 85 to 90. So you can see 2 more years. Okay, this 1980 Congress came into power and 5-year plans resumed. So 5-year plans actually stopped with the rolling plans. So first 3 plans, 3-year gap, then 2 plans, 2 gaps, then 2 plans, then 2 gaps. So the first 3 gaps is because of famine, food shortage, etc. This 2 gap is because of rolling plan. Okay, so these 3 were annual plans. Now here the gap is because of balance of payment crisis, and after that only we went for this reform, okay, LPG. So then from 92 onwards the plans continued, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 till Niti Aayog. The plan actually continued. Post Niti Aayog, planning is there, planning is not stopped. This 5-year plan concept actually stopped. So if you have missed out those videos on planning, you can get in touch with me here, my Instagram ID. You can join the Telegram channel. You will get all my videos over there. Watch all the videos. Economy will be covered. You don't want to read anything else for economy. It is complete in itself. Okay, you can take it for granted. So and if you need any help, mentorship program, classes, you can get in touch with me here. So let's see the growth. And 97 2002, then 2002 to like 2011, okay, and post that 2002. So here it was around 7.5%. So immediately after that 7.5%, then growth actually slightly reduced here, 5%. Okay, then it increased close to 8%. So here you can see a slowdown, and from here there is a slowdown. Okay, so this is how you can analyze the growth. Okay, so do you think much change is there here? 7.5 till then, 7.5, 5, 8. Okay, now you can interpret in whatever way you want. So that's about the first one. Second, you can talk about industrial productivity. Now when you talk about productivity, basically all those things are done to improve productivity and to improve efficiency. So actually efficiency is improved, and that you can understand from ICOR values, incremental capital output ratio. That also we have discussed as a concept. So second one, industrial productivity. Industrial productivity actually increased. Okay, so industrial productivity increased. Now how can you understand that? ICOR values coming down consistently, and we have discussed enough examples for this. What is ICOR value? Capital to output, right? So if this value is high, capital to output value is high, means what? That firm need more capital to produce certain output, right? So let's say for 5 rupees investment, let's say company A and company B. Company A is spending 5 lakh, and 5 lakh and 1 lakh is the output per year. Now company B is spending 4 lakh and 1 lakh is the output per year. So if you see here, per unit output, company A is spending 5, and per unit output company B is spending 4. So which company is efficient? The company B is efficient, because by spending less amount you are making the same quantity, right? So company B is efficient. That means ICOR value lesser will be better. Lesser the ICOR value, better will be efficiency. So when you're talking about productivity, I'm talking about efficiency. So when I'm talking about productivity, I can understand that in terms of ICOR value. So ICOR value of India actually consistently decreased. That can also be a prelims question. When I'm talking about ICOR value, basically I'm talking about productivity. Okay, so productivity is increased, ICOR value actually decreased. Then corporate profitability, you can also understand impact, or you can assess the industrial policy through corporate performance. So corporate profitability increased or decreased? drastically increased. Okay, so increased significantly. You can see that from corporate income tax, the share of corporate income tax that actually increased. Now if you remember when we discussed about revenue receipts in our chapter budget, if you missed out that budget, that chapter, you can go and you can watch that videos. We have done it completely, around 7 sessions I've taken. There we have talked about capital expenditure, revenue expenditure, capital receipts, revenue receipts, and in revenue receipts we talked about tax revenue and non-tax revenue. In the tax revenue, one of the major contributor is actually corporate income tax, right? So you can see CIT is actually increased. Before this excise duty was so high when it comes to that tax revenue, but now a corporate income tax is almost double of excise. Okay, so from that itself we can understand corporate profitability increased, corporate profit increased. Okay, then growth of consumer goods industries increased. Okay, see, consumer goods industries increase means what is the benefit out of it? When the consumer products will be more, right? So when consumer product will be more, the supply will be more. Now when the supply will be more, you can solve the problem of cost push inflation or supply side inflation. See, this is how, let's suppose this is a normal situation. Okay, so this much quantity is demanded at this particular price, and this is the equilibrium point, this is the equilibrium quantity, this is the equilibrium price. Okay, so at this particular price, this P1, this Q1 quantity bought and sold. Now let's say this is a supply curve, this is a demand curve. So more the supply, more industrial, more consumer goods industries means more supply. So supply curve will shift rightward. So there will be a rightward shift in the supply curve, and you can see the new this thing, that equilibrium will be this. So P1 become P2, that you can see price actually decreased. That means it decreased, the price decreased. That is good. That shows efficiency increased firstly, and inflation coming down, purchasing power of the people increased, the well-being of the people increased, and all these ways. And secondly, if you look into the x-axis, so here if this is microeconomic concept, if you take here macroeconomic concept, x-axis, I'll go for national income, because if you take all the quantities, that will be part of your national income, total production. So then this will be price level, average prices, not just price. So you can see here national income is also increasing. So that is also considered desirable. So in both way, firstly increasing national income because more production, secondly decreasing inflation because of higher supply. So in these two ways, this is actually considered as very good. Then what you can say is, next one is growth of, we are talking about impact, so we'll talk about positive as well as negative. Growth of capital goods industries increased or decreased? Decreased, right? Why? Because public sector investment decreased. And when I've told you public sector investment, we were investing in heavy industries, so capital goods industries. Okay, because public investment decreased. Okay, then you can write growth of registered manufacturing corporates increased. Growth of registered manufacturing corporates actually increased, and growth of unregistered manufacturing actually decreased. When I'm talking about unregistered manufacturing, I'm talking about MSMEs, etc. Okay, micro, small, medium enterprises. Then we can talk about capital intensive investments actually increased, and labor intensive investments decreased, and that is the reason for increase in unemployment rate and decrease in employment generation. Okay, so post liberalization, you will see a decrease in employment generation contrary to the expectation, and unemployment rate actually increased, poverty is actually increased, right? What is the reason? Capital intensive investment, not labor intensive investment. Okay, so capital intensive investment increased, and labor intensive actually decreased. Why? Basically automation is increased, you can write that also. Automation increased, and the growth is led by service sector. So the service sector having minimum people only, labor, not labor intensive, and the contribution in the GDP is much more. So that is what you call as jobless growth. Okay, so that led to a situation of jobless growth. And if you need to create jobs, if you need to create more job opportunities, industries have to do well. Okay, not the service sector. So industries have to be performing very well, and that's why we are going for a lot of skill development, national manufacturing policy, and all those things. We'll come to that in the next session. Then deficit market to surplus market. I've already told you supply is increased, right? Surplus market. Now when you talk about deficit market, it is producer's market. Now if you need some items, you need to depend on the producer. You give an order, you have to wait for a long time. For example, earlier if you need to get a car, you have to give a order, right? And you have to wait for 6 months or 1 year, and then only you'll get it. Now is that the case? Now it is consumer's market. Whenever you want, you can go, what brand you want, you can buy. So it is basically consumer's market because supply is increased. So surplus market is always a consumer's market. Okay, deficit market is producer's market. The producer is having the final say. If they are saying you give 1 lakh more, then I'll give you car, then it's up to the producer. They have the bargaining power. In case of surplus production, or in case of consumer's market, consumer is actually having the bargaining power. So I'll write here producers market to consumers market. See, all these points I'm talking economic point of view. Apart from that, I'm not talking about the political side of this LPG because we are dealing with economy. I'm not talking about the social side of LPG. My optional was sociology, so when I am writing, I'll write more social side. So when you're writing essay, you need to incorporate social sides, how it affect the various social aspects. I'm not getting into that in this lecture. We are only confining to that economic area. So sociology students, you have to think of that, what are the social impact of LPG. I hope you already know that. Okay, so social impact means we'll be talking about family, we'll be talking about caste, we'll be talking about village, we'll be talking about obligatory relations to contractual relations, we'll be talking about the problem of age, we'll be talking about the children, we'll be talking about women, and all these elements has to be incorporated. And if you're writing an essay, you also need to incorporate environmental aspect also here. So all those things can be written from your side. Here what all things I have discussed is specific to this policy and specific to economy. Okay, so I hope it is clear. We are confining to our discussion on economy only. Now we will see impact on firms owned by Indians because of this. Impact on firms owned by Indians. Now what happened? There is an increase in chances of collaboration with the foreign partners. So increased scope of foreign collaboration. That means better technology, better technical know-how, better infrastructure. All these are advantage, right? So technology transfer, import of machinery, raw materials, all these are getting easier now. Import of technology or import of machinery, raw materials, etc. Ease of doing business increased. Ease of doing business increased. When I'm talking about ease of doing business increased, basically the procedure hurdles actually decreased. Now things are getting easier, right? External commercial borrowing, the scope of external commercial borrowing increased, and that is one of the reason why we have a huge external debt. Okay, so we have around 25% of our GDP external debt, around $520 billion. Okay, so $520 billion is our external debt. What is our forex? Forex is around $450 billion only. So with our forex, 75% of our external debt can be met. Now what is the reason for this huge external debt? It is because of private borrowing. 80% of this external debt is by the private, only 20% is by the government. That you need to know. Okay, so majority of the external debt is by the private. Okay, that in detail we have discussed in our module on balance of payment. You go to that chapter and complete it. Okay, so easy B. Then what are the negatives? Negatives, if you see, it affects the MSMEs. Okay, so the competition is getting tougher, and all these points you can write. So I hope this is clear. There is no need to have any doubt in this discussion. We were talking about the one point which we missed out, we have discussed, we have completed related to public sector. That is related to the previous video. And then here we have seen the assessment. So I hope you understood. Okay. If you have any doubts still, you can get in touch with me here. This is my Instagram ID. Join the Telegram channel so that you won't miss any of my video. Okay. So we will cover complete history. We have in fact covered the complete modern India, and in future I'll cover world history and other areas also. So see you guys.